Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Give us your full name.
Aaron Hurd.
Okay. And Mr. Hurd, where were you born?
I was born in Athens. As a matter of fact, where the school is right now, I was born right around the corner where the school sits.
Okay. On what street?
It was a Hancock Street that ran up through that way.
Okay. Okay.
But basically, um, uh, where the football field was, right out there.
Mm-hmm.
Our house was right across the street from it.
Okay. Okay.
And that's where I was born.
Okay. So that house is gone now.
Oh yeah. Well, it's not there, of course, but it's down the hill. They moved it.
They moved it. So the house still.
The house is still in existence.
Okay. All right.
Right.
Okay.
We don't own it anymore, but it's still in existence.
Okay.
And then after that, I think we moved to Morristown.
Okay. So how old were you when you moved from this area to Morristown?
About 3 years old.
About 3 years old. Okay.
Like
all right. So you don't remember much about.
Not a whole lot.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the house, and I remember some
You
things.
do remember?
Because my mother had 13 children.
Did she?
And I was number 13.
Really? Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And from there, we moved to Broad Acres. That's where I grew up.
Okay.
I did attend West Broad,
Mm-hmm.
and my early years.
Okay.
And I think after that, we went to Line.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about your family before we move on. You say you had.
Okay.
So there was 12 sisters and brothers.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And only 4 of us are alive now.
Okay.
But
And what was your mom's name?
Henrietta Sheets
Okay.
was the maiden name,
Uh-huh.
but Henrietta Hurd, of course.
Okay.
My father was named Clarence Hurd.
Okay. Clarence.
Um,
And what did they do?
well, my mother was kind of a housewife,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
and my father worked at Nally's in Atlanta.
Nally's.
Yeah,
Okay.
for a long while.
Okay.
Now, my grandmother and grandfather owned grocery stores here.
They did?
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
And because I was a little bit like that,
Uh-huh.
and that was in the early years. I guess it's
And
amazing.
their names were?
Well, Kitty and Will H and Kitty Sheets.
Sheets. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I also had a.
Do you know where the store was?
Yes.
Okay.
You know where? Let's see. On Broad Street, where the Amoses live. You know where the Amoses used to live up there.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of the stores was on that corner.
Okay.
And then the other store
Mm-hmm.
was the little building where Michael Thurman had his campaign office.
Okay.
When he ran.
Up on Hancock.
Right. As
Okay.
a matter of
So
fact,
that building's still there. I know.
it's still
I
there.
know where you're talking about.
As a matter of fact, just in the last recent years, maybe 8, 10, 12,
Uh-huh.
15 years,
Mhm.
you could still see his name, W.H. Sheets Grocery,
Really?
in faint.
Okay.
Yeah, it was faint
Okay.
because they've been painted over so
Uh-huh.
many times.
Wow.
But basically, that's the that's the kind of the origin of
Okay.
of what that is.
Uh-huh.
And of course, my mother married a Hood, and that's how I got my name.
Okay.
So that's kind of my family.
Okay. Okay.
So I had within my brothers and sisters, I had a couple of good athletes that came before me.
Mm-hmm.
My brother was one,
Mm-hmm.
played football, and then my sister played basketball.
Okay.
And both of those have passed on.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not in the four that's still
Okay.
living.
Okay.
So,
And they played football and basketball
No.
for high school. And,
for Athens High.
okay.
Both of them played for
Okay.
Athens High.
Okay.
My brother played back in 46, 47, 48.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister played basketball 53, 54, 55,
Okay.
56,
Okay.
stuff like that.
Okay. Okay.
And then I came along after that
Uh-huh.
and played from 63 until 65.
Okay.
Well, 62 until 65.
Okay. What do you remember about this community? What if you kind of? I know you gave me a picture of that building because I know what that building. What did you see in the community? I mean, in terms of what did it look like as a
Well,
child?
in my era, because integration had not come about,
Right.
of course.
Mm-hmm.
But in my era, basically, people were close knit.
Okay.
Families were close knit.
Mm-hmm.
Even though there were a few fathers missing out of the house, it was not like it is now.
Okay.
The family structure was stronger. People in the community kind of took you in, and what I mean by that is this. As I said, I grew up in Broad Acres.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't remember a time living in Broad Acres when we had to lock our door.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, my mother used to leave her insurance money in the mailbox, and of course, she did not have a checking account, so it was cash.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It was never stolen.
Mm-hmm. What about that?
So, I kind of remember that basically everything was sort of, people didn't put us in harm's way as kids.
Okay.
We used to come to school, we leave the door unlocked, we go, I never had a key.
Mm-hmm.
And just to show you how the community was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Of course, now that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you know that.
Right.
But those are the kind of things that I remember,
Mm-hmm.
coming up. Crime, well, we didn't know crime like that. We didn't experience that.
Right.
We didn't have break-ins
Mm-hmm.
and people taking things from
Mm-hmm.
people. As a matter of fact, and because there were no drugs
Mm-hmm.
the way it is now.
Right.
So I kind of remember, even though it was a segregated society,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of remember it being much more positive than what it is now.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is this. When we were growing up, the thrust for us was to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
The thrust for us was to finish high school.
And that was in Broad Acres, right?
That was in Broad Acres,
Mm-hmm.
right.
Right.
And, we didn't know nothing else to do but that.
Mm-hmm.
And people in the community expected for us to do that.
Mm-hmm.
They expected for us to go. Now, because I played football,
Mm-hmm.
Which means that I got a scholarship.
Right.
And I was fortunate enough to be able to go to school and graduate
Mm-hmm.
because I did play football free
Mm-hmm.
and had opportunity to play some pro football.
Mm-hmm.
So my point is, the times that we grew up, I mean, pro football was not even on our mind.
Right.
I mean, oh yeah, it was, the pro football was out there like it is now,
Right.
but we didn't strive for that.
Mm-hmm.
That was not our thrust.
Mhm.
Our thrust was to get an education.
Mhm.
And within the framework of that, if you were lucky or fortunate enough to go to pro, well, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But that, we didn't strive for that.
Right.
Today, kids are striving for that.
Mhm.
And if you look at the statistic aspect of it, for an example, there are about a million high school seniors in America that's graduating from high school every year.
Right.
When they get on the college level,
Mm-hmm.
it's about 215,000 seniors in all of colleges across America.
Okay.
But then when you get ready to go on the pro level,
Mhm.
there's only about 213 positions that are available.
213.
So if you look at it that way, even if you're good enough, everybody can't go pro.
Right.
So that means that academically, you need to not only take advantage of being able to go to college free,
Mm-hmm.
but you need to excel academically.
How did the community instill those things in you?
Well, it was the expectation.
Okay.
It was what people expect. They expected for you to be respectful.
Mm-hmm.
They expected for you to go to school. And when you went to school, they expected for you to get your lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know when integration came about, they took Palin out of school, but they had it when I was in.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying that to say this. If you got into something and you were Pal at school, of course they told your parents, you get another one at home.
Okay.
Those kind of expectations are not does not exist today.
Mm.
And that's what I mean by the expectation.
Okay.
So you kind of understood what people expected from you. You understood that you didn't have curse words come out of your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
You understood that you need to respect women and older people.
Mm-hmm.
You understood that. I mean, that was no, you know,
Right.
and that's how we were brought up.
Okay. And then you entered West Broad School, which was across the street.
Was across the
Do
street.
you remember when that happened? What was that like?
Well, I remember teachers like Miss Morton.
Mm-hmm.
The school structure was sort of like the community structure.
Mm-hmm.
The teachers expected for you to be there.
Mm-hmm.
The teachers expected for you
We
to
okay?
do your lesson.
Mm-hmm.
The teachers expected for you to be respectful.
Mm-hmm.
It was an expectation. In other words, it was like an umbrella
Okay.
of expectation.
Mm-hmm.
You expected to excel in the community, and you expected to excel academically.
Okay.
So that kind of shaped and molded us
Mm-hmm.
because we were always on edge about people watching us. Neighbors could whoop you if you got into something.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't exist today.
Right.
You see.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I remember our community at that time.
Okay. Great.
And then of course going to high school here,
Mm-hmm.
and then going on to college, you
Okay.
know, then everything just kind of developed.
Right.
And I think those principles that I gained growing up, they stayed with me throughout.
Mm.
Not only college, but you know, during my life. And I'm 67 years old right now.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I remember the community.
Okay. Okay.
Back in the
Okay. So you attended West Broad School for how many years?
3 years.
3 years. Okay. Okay. And
And then we went to Lyons.
all right.
And then we came up here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they